Okay, we're gonna do the approximants in English, and we'll be basically done with all the phonemes of English, but I'm also gonna give you a flap or a tap in English, which is not officially a phoneme of English, but it's a sound that you will use a lot when you transcribe. So we'll start with, this is the R sound, upside down R and backwards is the sound for R. Remember we had said before, I don't know if you've gotten to this point in class yet, but if you do a R that's right side up, that is the trilled R. This is the sound that I can't do very well. There, I got it. Okay, more or less. So that is in a lot of languages. A lot of languages have a trilled R, but English we use this R. This is a weird sound. A sound a lot of kids have trouble with. It's a sound that people in languages who don't have it have a lot of trouble with. And Americans even make it differently, so that makes it even harder. It's kind of, some people make it by putting their tongue kind of facing up towards their alveolar ridge, like not touching it, but just kind of aiming up. Some people actually curl their tongue backward, ra, 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 and some people do that in certain words. Some people actually make the tip of the tongue kind of behind their teeth, ra, ra. So you can make it, actually I think you can make it, there's a number of different ways, maybe 5 or so different ways that people can make R's. And so it's a very complicated sound. And that is probably part of the reason it's a little bit hard to teach too. This is the la, la. So, and remember approximants, I should have mentioned this at the beginning, right? We've done stops where you're stopping the air and sometimes letting it go through your nose in a nasal stop, letting it burst through your mouth in an oral stop. Then we had fricatives where your tongue is coming very close so that just air can just hiss through. You get those hissing sounds. Now in approximants, the tongue is still, like if this is the top of your mouth when you're making an R, the tongue comes up to the alveolar ridge, but it doesn't come very close at all. So there's a lot of air going through. So you don't even get that hissing sound. That's what an approximants are. All right. So L, this is called a lateral approximant. There's 4 approximants in English. These 3 are what we call central approximants. The air is coming down the center of the mouth. The L is a lateral approximant. So say la, 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 feel your tongue. You should be probably touching your alveolar ridge, la, and your air is going out the side of your mouth. So that is called a lateral approximant. That is our only one in English, our lateral approximant, la. Then feel the ya. So this is a good one to feel. Say ra, 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 and then say ya, 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 and kind of try to feel, is your tongue more back? So when you say ra, ra, ya, ra, ya, you should feel your tongue is more back. When you're saying ra, 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 your tongue is, here's kind of the top of your, I can't really do it this way, okay? So pretend the front of your mouth is here, the back of your mouth is here. Here's your alveolar ridge right here, and you're kind of, when you're saying ra, most people kind of moving up here, maybe twirling their tongue back a little, maybe doing this. When you say ya, you're hitting the hard palate, so here's the alveolar ridge, next is the hard palate, and back here is the soft palate. So it's called a palatal sound. It's coming, your tongue is coming up towards, as opposed to being here for a ra, it's kind of coming like this. But it's, again, there's a big space here, but you're kind of bringing up the middle back of your tongue. So ya, ya, ya. It's a little hard to feel where it is. One good way to feel where your tongue is if you say ra, ra, and then breathe in, ra, and you should feel most of the air underneath your tongue, and then say ya, ya, and breathe in, ya. And you should probably feel a lot of air on the top of your tongue because the top of your tongue is kind of down and you're kind of using the middle towards the back to kind of come up towards your palate. So that's a ya sound. It's our only palatal sound in English. So that is going to be important when you're learning palatal sounds in other languages. It can help you figure out where those sounds are. All right. Wa is the only of these consonants that is not on the IPA. If you search on the IPA, that rectangular part of the IPA, there's no wa there. That is because this is made in two places. You consider it a bilabial velar approximant, because when you say wa in English, you're using your lips. So it's a bilabial sound, wa, because if you don't use your lips, it's kind of right? It doesn't really sound like a wa. You need your lips. But your tongue is also moving back. So say ya, and pay attention to your tongue, ya. Then say wa. You should feel it moving even further back. It's a velar sound. So it's kind of where you make a ka, ga, wa. It's very close. Your tongue goes back. Again, it doesn't touch at all, so it's far away. So it's harder for you to feel that, but it is further back. So that's a wa. Those are your 4 approximates in English. All right, then I'm gonna add this one extra sound. This is called a flap or tap. And if you look at the IPA, there's a row for flaps and taps. There's a row for trills. We don't have any trills in English. There's a row for lateral fricatives. We don't have any lateral fricatives in English, so we'll come to those later. But there is a row for taps and flaps. And it looks kind of like this. Make sure when you make it, it's very clear that you're not making an R, right? So if you make a symbol like this, I won't know what that is. I'll mark it wrong. Even if you make it like that, I guess that, oh, sorry, that's a flap. That's fine. But you don't want to do something, like if you start doing this, I'll be thinking like, is that an R or a flap? I don't know. So just kind of, make a hook and then give it a little bottom, all right? And that is a flap. So here's an example of some transcribed words. I don't know if you can guess what these words are. This is the word letter. This is the word butter. All right. In English, a flap is always going to be in the middle of a word, and to us, it'll be where we usually put T's or D's. Okay? It is not a phoneme in English, and this will become more clear later what that means. I know you don't quite know what that means yet, but it means, that's why when I say it's in letter or butter, in your head you would be like, letter, that's a T, or butter, that's a T, or ladle, in the word ladle, that's a D. So what happens with some sounds is we'd make them slightly different than normal. Like maybe you notice when you say T, right, or top, feel that T, top. You're kind of stopping the air, top, T, and it's bursting out. Then say letter normally, letter, right? That's not happening. You don't say letter, unless you're British, then you might say it. Letter, butter, right? We don't do that. We say letter. It almost sounds like a D. So if you're noticing, wow, it kind of sounds like a D, letter, butter, it's because it's a voice sound, so it is going to sound kind of like a D. But the difference, so again, say da, right? You're kind of stopping the air. When you do a flap or a tap, what happens is your tongue, once again, here's the top of your mouth, your tongue kind of whips up and down. That's a flap or a tap. It just kind of taps. So that's not the same as a stop, like in a da or a ta. So it's a sound that we use in English in like letter, better, butter, better, ladle, impossibility at the end. If you say impossibility, itty, you're making a flap, all right? And I'll talk about that more later. I just wanted to introduce it now because we were kind of going over that consonant chart, that we will use that a lot when we're transcribing in English. And because American speakers use flaps. British speakers do not use flaps. It's one of those things that if you're British, you really notice when Americans do flaps because that sounds weird to them. All right, and that's it for the approximants and the taps and flaps.